Hello, innovators. I am Dustin Miller, PolyInnovator. Today I'm talking with Anupam Kundu, the co-founder CEO of RealValue, a video analytics and visual intelligence platform, as well as CEO and co-founder of CalculAI, Polymath, strategist, future of work enthusiast, and visual thinker and dog lover. So thank you for joining me on the Polymath podcast.
Thank you for having me here.
I always love it when I run out of breath when I'm doing the intros. That's when I know it's going to be a good guest. Hello and welcome to the Polymath PolyCast.
It's interesting, right? Like everyone has identity. And it's somebody, you ask like, hey, where are you from? That's a common question in New York, right? When you meet someone. Like, okay, where do you want me to be from? I'm an American citizen. Born in India, but then if you ask me where I would like to be from, I would like to be from Barcelona.
Oh yeah, Barcelona is such a beautiful place, and it's a smart city too, no less.
It's a smart city,
Yeah.
and I love that place, right? And so identity is such a interesting topic by itself, and just to put attributes on it, and you always feel like, how do you define yourself? I mean, we can just go simple, like another human being.
Yeah. Well, and it's interesting too, because Barcelona is one of the places I've always been attracted to, but there's two places I want to move to, Austin and Singapore, two places that are very more techie or advanced, I would say.
Yeah.
Barcelona is probably number 3 out of all of those two.
Yeah, but Barcelona is also a pretty smart, savvy tech city. Yeah, they're doing very good for themselves.
Yeah. In fact, there was a Ziggurat is a university there. They're like one of the only smart city degrees you have, and they're from like Barcelona and Spain.
Yeah. So I am about 1.5 hours away from Barcelona right now, but in France, not in Spain.
That's really cool. You can just hop right over, huh?
You cannot right now.
Well, not right now, I guess. Yeah. But I was thinking kind of in big picture, so to speak. But so thank you for joining me on the show. This is a show by PolyInnovator. So please say hello to the innovators in the audience.
Hello to all the innovators in the audience. And I'm guessing it's all about being polymath, polyglot, multipotentialite, and all of that. That's on Justin's blog.
Well, I would just say multidisciplinary people in general too.
Yes, I think that's the key part of it, that everybody these days needs to be multidisciplinary. And somehow I feel like the age of, I mean, there would be always specialists. You need specialists. But I think more and more you need people who can kind of work at the seams and not just in a specific discipline, right? And when you work at the seams, you need to be a multidisciplinary person.
Yeah, see different trenches of knowledge, so to speak.
Yeah.
And something I saw that I'm not sure is true or not, but someone stated that you are an ENFP, and I am as well. So I thought that might be kind of nice to mention.
Oh, thank you. It's some tests that I took like some time back, a long back. And that's there. The company that I used to work for, ThoughtWorks, long back, one of the things that they used to use during the interview process was to take through a lot of psychology tests to understand how you would work in a stress situations and things like that. And how would you gel in a team? How would you handle diversity in your team? Things, and it was interesting. I mean, one question we used to ask pretty often, and I think this could be interesting to your readers and watchers, in the sense that like when teams are hanging out, they used to go for bars or a bowling game or a pool or something like that, right? Now, let's say if you have a bunch of females in your team, would you go to a nail salon for hanging out and get pedicure, manicure? And that's a very interesting question, right? You're asking to someone who is interviewing, and if there's a dude, like he's like thinking about this if he has never been in a situation like that, and it's kind of process it through like, okay, that can also happen, right? I'm like, yeah, that could also happen. And I think it's,
and how open-minded are they too?
Yeah,
it's
really.
Well, and I think this kind of goes into the idea of what we're going to talk about too with the future of work as well, because it's all about the mindset. And even though those personality tests may not be concrete, or they're more of just kind of soft science, so to speak, it is interesting to think about, and it gives us kind of food for thought.
Yes, it is definitely. I think there is undoubtedly no reason to think that those characters, ENFP, are going to define you, shape you, or something like that. But in many ways, They're just kind of giving you a benchmark of like, okay, here are your strengths, and play up to your strength, work on your weaknesses, and build up and figure out when you're interacting that these are your strengths. And if there is something missing, build on it, that if you want to. Right? That's if you're going to work in a global setting or in a diverse setting, you need those. You need to know what your strengths are. You need to know how to play them correctly.
Well, and it's interesting too, because I don't know if this is just because we change over time, but I was told that because if you took that test like 2 times in a row, you could get different results, even if it's the same day. And it's just interesting to think about. It's a good measuring point, but a lot of people dig right into and like put it as gospel basically and believe it so much.
I think they're just benchmarks, right? Like maybe on a different day, you're a different person.
Yeah.
When you wake up, you had a really good sleep and you're very positive, you're everything. And then throughout the day, you get bombarded with different messages and things like that. And maybe you take the test and you end up having different attributes which are not there in the morning.
Mm-hmm.
It's very much possible. I think one of the things that we used to do was we used to say like, hey, just take the test without like thinking about it too much. It's just one more attribute in the interview process. It's not like something that we care about as much as the conversation we care about.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, that's interesting. I'm glad I brought it up there too. And guess we kind of just dove right into it there. So we don't really need an icebreaker, but something I like to ask before the questions is to have you share something about yourself that no one knows about you.
That's a great question. No one knows about me, but at least I know about me.
At least hopefully right? You know,
yeah. Something that I know and no one else knows about. I've not thought of it like that. I mean, these days, if you think of it, you pretty much live your life out in the open, right? Live it loud and live out loud. And one of the things that I personally believe is that I bring my whole self into my work, into my relationships, into my conversations, right? And so when I bring my whole self, it's pretty much an open book. There are things that you may not know that, for example, we recently bought, my son recently got a pair of headphones. Okay, this is his first set of headphones. He's 4-year-old. And I just had a conversation with him that, hey, do you know that I grew up in a setting where I didn't have a headphone till I was 21.
Oh, wow.
And I bought it for myself because my parents couldn't afford it at that point. So you're extremely privileged, right? I think it just blew him over. Like he's like, what, 21? Like that's crazy. To him, like, okay, he got one at 4 years. He's talking to Alexa. He's playing with iPad, and like it's a completely different world if you think of in one generation, right? And so there are so many things that I think from that past world that a lot of people don't know about. So one would be like, I had a headphone only when I was 21.
Yeah, that's perfect. No, that's great. And it brings up the idea of like maybe data privacy as well, how much we're open to sharing our personal knowledge, so to speak. But it also kind of reminds me, there was this video of a little 2-year-old picking up a Game Boy, one of the original Game Boys. And she knew that there was buttons there, but she didn't interact with them. She kept trying to touch the screen. She couldn't fathom that there wasn't a touch screen at that time. I mean, there was technically the technology, but she couldn't fathom it. She just literally couldn't get her head around it. It was adorable.
I think I have seen that with my son several times, like because he thinks everything is an iPad.
Well, and I know that there was a commercial for the iPad where they were making fun of it, people calling it a computer, because it is a computer. It has a CPU, it has all these different processes to it, and so it is a computer. But the whole point of the commercial was like, "Hey, get off your computer and come inside." And the little kid looks up and says, "What's a computer?" It kind of made me.
I think in one generation we have moved from phone to typewriter to keyboard to touch, right? And a little bit of, I think we are doing like VR things like right now, which is not yet there, right? Like, and we're doing gestures, right? So I think maybe not in my generation, but at least in my son's generation, we will go into the brain-computer interface, where we could actually do things on the computer by just thoughts.
Right. I know
which
Elon Musk is working on that.
uh, I have seen
Great.
some of that in very close encounters. I'm forgetting the name of this person. He had an electrode plugged into his brain to see different colors because he was colorblind or something like that. And he wanted to see the colors. And then he plugged in another electrode to detect seismic activities to figure out if there's an earthquake in the world or something. And so the cyborg, so he's a cyborg, basically. And I was just, oh my God, somebody could do that. Like,
it's fantastic.
Yeah, but I think in the generation that's coming up, we would see some of that where we'll just move away from touch, we'll go to gesture, and eventually we'll probably go into eye movement, and then we'll probably end up in thoughts to computer direct link.
Well, and it's interesting too, because even back in 2012, I was really into VR and immersive gaming. And this is back when the Oculus first came out, like the first version of the Oculus, no less. And I was looking into motion controllers and eye controllers. There's a Tobii eye tracker where it puts underneath your monitor on top monitor, and it tracks your eyes. And that's advanced so much in the past 10 years. But even back then, there was ambient lighting tools that like have light behind your monitor to show up different lights on the screen or different aspects of this immersive gaming. It was just so fantastic. And I just love seeing it evolve over the past 10 years.
I think gaming is kind of the frontier if you want to think of like what technology would be in, I don't know, next 15, 20 years. I think multiplayer games are like just multiplayer role-playing games are, I think, really crazy stuff. We would never think of those kind of things, but now they are all, if you see most of the Hollywood movies, they're inspired. Like when they do these sci-fi movies, there's a lot of elements in there which are inspired by games. Whereas other sci-fi movies also inspired by games. And I think there is a give and take relationship there.
Well, one of the best video game series in basically ever is Mass Effect, the trilogy, where it had a basically Star Wars influence. It was made to be a Star Wars game originally, and then it changed to be something of its own. And so it's a video game based off of a concept based off of a movie. And so it's just interesting how that evolved.
Yeah, I think it's just storytelling part, right, that attracts people. And then once you're into it, then it's different. And with COVID, I think VR is getting so much momentum because people are trying to communicate authentically and give the environment, that physical environment when you're not there, right? I think in VR you have this concept of presence, which is like you are present in a setting and you are feeling the setting. I think that by itself has become so much more important right now. For example, if I'm just thinking loud out here, I know that Apple and many other companies who make hardware in China, they used to fly people out there every week to do quality testing. And now they cannot because of COVID, or sometimes they couldn't. I'm just wondering, like, wouldn't they have some kind of a VR setup to actually know what's getting built out and how it's getting built out and how are they going to communicate specifications and things like that.
And just how they might go about doing it. Because I mean, video conferencing too is also evolving. And I don't think there's really that good of a option for VR video conferencing. I had a guy who was one of the first people to create a talk show in VR. And so he was on the bleeding edge of a lot of that tech. And it was just interesting where we were talking about how just those different softwares work and that kind of thing, and just how the whole logistics of it was. And it's just interesting how it takes a lot of companies and moving pieces to come together. So once that gets simplified, I think that's when it's going to really become more mainstream.
Got it. I mean, definitely it's a seriously evolving thing. And I have seen a lot of companies in the last 9-10 months that have come up for virtual conferences. They are doing virtual conferences, right? And those companies are raising truckloads of money to build out the experience. And some of them are running on Unreal Engine from Unity. Some of them are just trying to be a better Zoom.
Which is not that hard to be doing at this point. It's interesting too, because Well, and diving into the questions here, actually, because I found you through your articles on multipotentialites. And I think
Yeah.
that right there is a good example of just how connected we are. I found you just through articles, and it was multipotentialites in the future of work. And so I wanted to dig into that a bit and so ask you, what sort of things do you think are important to note on that front?
When I wrote that piece of work, I was in between jobs, in between transitioning out from one company to another company, right?
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things that I realized when I was transitioning out of this company called ThoughtWorks is that I was there for 8 years. And during that 8 years, I evolved many different times and I transformed in my role,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like in the sense that I came in as a program manager, project manager. When I left, I was running a piece of business for them, multi-billion dollar piece of business for financial services across the world with someone else. Um, and then I realized that, man, I couldn't even have imagined that I could be this person.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of things that I learned and unlearned over a period of time. And I kind of said yes to a lot of things, right? Like just opportunistically, do you want to do this? Yes. Do you want to do this? Yes. It's the interest, but I want to do this, many things, right? If you come up with an opportunity, I'll probably say yes. And that kind of transformed the journey of what I could have been. Like there could be always an alternate scenario. What happened if I said no?
Mm-hmm.
There's an alternate path, right?
Different
Um,
timeline.
yes, different person. And so then I started kind of researching into this, and then I looked up the history, and I started looking at different people, and I saw that okay, it's not something unique. Historically, there have been people who have multiple areas of interest. They excel in multiple areas. They just do well in different things because they're interested in it, and they can learn fast. They can go quickly deep into it, connect the dots, bring the experiences from other areas and match it up and say like, how can I enhance this area with that experience and that area with this experience? Oh, I have learned chemistry. How can I bring that? Oh, I have learned business. How can I bring that? Oh, I have done this. And so they have this acumen of connecting dots and bringing together disparate experiences to create something cohesive in the domain that they are. And that makes the learning faster. And that's a multi-potentialite for you.
Yeah. Well, and it's interesting too. The way you explained it was super like on point. I wanted to give you props for that because it's interesting too because I've been digging into this kind of thing for years. I did my first research into Leonardo da Vinci when I was in 7th grade, and that's the thing where I know that I've been into it for a long time, but a lot of people have just been discovering it, or entrepreneurs discovering the fact that they might be multi-potentialites, and like yourself too, discovering the fact that over 8 years
They have to be.
you have to be.
Yeah.
Especially in order to be successful a lot of the time.
Yeah.
And being able to say yes to opportunity makes you more multidisciplinary by nature.
Yeah. So I think that's interesting. So tell me about you. What are the things that you are hitting on these days in terms of being multipotentialite?
Yeah, I actually found a lot of parallels to what your story was there, where I was working for my first company that I ever worked for, because obviously I haven't worked for super long time, but I for 8 years I've worked for an aquatics facility where I was a lifeguard, then quickly became a swim instructor, and a little bit after that, pool manager, water books instructor, and that, like you said, saying yes to opportunities. So literally, I told my boss I wanted to become a water books instructor and manager on Monday. 2 days later, one of the instructors didn't show up for the water books class, and she's like, "Well, you can do it." And I wanted to say no, but I said yes to that opportunity, and that led me down a whole nother path of teaching fitness and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So I think that's it's fantastic.
And I think, like one of the things that I wrote in there is that most, again, like we're looking at different kind of problems. Like if you look at today, a climate crisis or diversity, inclusivity challenges, or you look at COVID, you cannot solve this issue by just having one particular skill set, right? Like you cannot be a doctor and solve everything. You cannot be a climate specialist and solve everything, because there are like touch points. There are people who are part of the stakeholder ecosystem that you have to kind of influence, bring them together. And so you have to work in a setting which is multidisciplinary, as you said, like your audience. And hence, if you're working in that kind of setting, you have to work collaboratively, you have to work creatively, you have to have critical thinking.
Yeah.
You have to, so once you start looking into this, these are very typical multidisciplinary qualities, and you will become a multipotentialite and very easily.
Well, it's interesting too because those soft skills that are needed. In fact, most of the the articles that you'll see on like, hey, these are the skills you need for the 2020s if you want to get hired, and they're like critical thinking and being able to make connections and being able to have
Yeah,
empathy and emotional intelligence. All these skills a lot of people often get when they are being multidisciplinary, like you just said. That's yeah. How would you define a multi-potentialite?
that's I think in the same way that I defined in my article is that
Yeah.
someone who has an interest in different things and can actually learn things quicker than possibly other people, just by kind of collating experiences and thoughts and things that they have, and they build something very quickly, which would take someone else to do slightly, like they would have to ramp up, whereas this ramp up of this multipotentialite person is much faster. So they have to have interest in multiple things. They can learn faster, they can unlearn faster something, right? So that they have to pick up something new, and they can go deep and excel in that new topic quickly, right? So when you start displaying those attributes, right, then you become, you're kind of on that journey of becoming a multipotentialite. Another thing that I've seen is that I think I wrote in the second article is that usually this kind of people are very experimental. uh, right? So they would, it's not just, okay, just because I have one thought, that's the right thought, but they would do research, they would do some experiments, they would validate, and if based on that, they would choose X or Y, right? Um, and I think being experimental, being able to frame up problem space correctly, being able to kind of having the empathy of understanding of the stakeholder ecosystem, and being able to think holistically around, okay, if I do X, X is going to have ripple effect on many different things, and how does that work out in 2 or 3 ways, right? So when you start kind of looking into these things, you cannot stay anymore a specialist, because a specialist would just do one thing. And I think one good example would be, um, um, like we work right now in artificial intelligence, right? And people always say like, oh, like what algorithms are there? And we always keep on telling them like, algorithms are really easy to build. I mean, one person can probably, if you have the data, we can build an algorithm pretty quickly. But to put together a solution and actually make it happen in production, that is incredibly challenging.
Business.
Yeah. And to do that, you need a cross-disciplinary team, not just one person writing an algorithm or two-person creating an algorithm.
So that's interesting too, because one thing that I think you might find interesting is I've been working on this multidisciplinary spectrum. So working with all these different terms, such as multipotentialite, generalist, jack of all trades, and putting them all in kind of this chart of flowing into a level of competency, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
And so multipotentialite, I often find, is someone who's experimental, like you're saying. They have the potential to do many different things, but because they've always had many different hands in different cookie jars, they haven't really achieved that level of specialist just yet. But as they start specializing and they have allied with like a jack of all trades and multi-potentialite, they become a T-shaped person. And then down the line, more of a generalist, more of a polymath, or if they want to go down the specialist route, that's fine too. But it's interesting how, depending on competency, it kind of changes where you are on that spectrum.
Yeah, I've been, T-shape has been there in existence for a long time, right? Like you have a horizontal and then you have expertise. Uh, the reason why people read T shape in a wrong way is because T has only one vertical bar and there's a long horizontal bar. So like, am I specialized in business? And I know other generic skills. Am I specialized in physiology and I know other generic skills? But it could be that you're specialized in business as well as in physiology, right?
Mm-hmm.
So to me, I think of it more like stalactites and like that, right? So you have like this horizontal skill set around generic skill set of working together, collaboration, creative thinking, critical thinking, and all of these things. And then you have these specialized skills, which could be in your domain, or which could be in your topic, or which could be in your areas of interest. Like maybe it could be, for example, like let's say you are in the AI space and you could be in the retail space, or you could be in the manufacturing space. You may have deep knowledge about supply chain. But you could be a very good, you also understand machine learning.
Yeah.
That's like, okay, it's possible.
Yeah.
I've met people like that. And so that's that. So to me, it's like more stalactites kind of thing. Like you have a lot of different things, and then you have a horizontal on the top. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I often see it the other way around, where it's like multiple trees, but it's still the same picture, so to speak.
Same
A big
picture.
line,
Yes.
multiple lines, and
Yes.
it's interesting too, because that's what we're both saying the same thing, but it's just interesting how we both viewed it slightly differently. I love that. And multi-potentialites, like Wapnick had said, who came up with the kind of term there, they're able to be like, they're like putty, and they're able to adapt to situations quite
Yeah.
effortlessly. So what sort of challenges, as do you say, people like us face?
Most places are not set up to handle us. Right? Like, for example, if you just go to LinkedIn and you look for jobs, they would say like, I need a quality analyst, I need a developer, I need a this, I need a that, I need a they don't say that, and I think it's good in many ways, because people know what they are looking for and what they need for their, and I think very recently, I think people have started adding other qualities in there that they're looking for, right? Like, I need a team player, they need to be versatile in collaborating with offshore employees and have a global audience culture and able to talk to customers. Like, these are other things that they have started asking for, right? What I think is that when you go into a setting where you're multi-potentialite, there is a high chance of misunderstanding of what you bring into the table, right? Like, people can say like, okay, oh, you are this audio recording guy, let's say, right? So why don't you focus on the microphone and do the audios?
Yeah.
We're going to take care of the rest, right? Whereas you may have an interest in, I don't know, you maybe have an interest in looking at the script and changing the little bit on the narrative, which has nothing to do with the audio per se.
Right.
Uh, and if you try to do that, it may be like, hey, and your job is to do that. So just keep focusing on that. And I think that misunderstanding, underappreciation could be something that to watch out for. I mean, obviously, there are companies where it's not like that, like GitHub, Valve, WHGo, there are ThoughtWorks. There are companies where it used to be like, it's much more open, right? Like, you come in, you kind of build your skill set, you express your interest, and you figure out what you want to do, where you want to work, how you, and then as you progress, you gather feedback from your coworkers, you kind of look at your interests and how you've done, and then you move on. Very early on, for example, I started as a programmer. And within 3-4 years of programming and implementing solutions at different customer sites, I realized that there are better programmers in town.
Yeah.
My interest is in technology, but not necessarily in programming. My interest is like, how can I use technology to solve something? Programming is definitely needed to do that, but there are other things that are needed to actually make the program successful. Right? So now if I present that to someone, they would be like, dude, no, do the programming. You don't understand the business nuances. You are here to write this code.
Yeah. I've definitely faced some stuff like that myself too, where I literally applied for a marketing role. I think it was an internship, but it was more of like a generalistic role. And the thing is, I focused on omnichannel marketing for PolyInnovator. I wanted to create, I want to be the graphics designer. I want to be the actual marketing copy person. I want to create the blog post, the audio, like you're saying. Like, people identify me as the audio or video guy now, but I started out with blog posts almost 10 years ago. And so when I do my series, I start out with a blog post, then I turn that into a video and audio.
Yeah.
I start with the writing. And so most people don't even realize that the writing comes first. They always see the video and they always see that part of it.
It's I think that underappreciation and the misunderstanding could be like, hey, you're trying to do a lot of things. What's going on? Hey, some people try with that. I mean, what can you do? I mean, and you have good examples, right? Like, and I think people get it wrong when they say like, oh, so you're thinking like you're Leonardo da Vinci, like you're going to do this, that, and or you are like Elon Musk, you're going to run like 5 companies and be successful in all of that. And I think those comparisons kind of sets you up for failure, right?
Yeah.
You don't have to be wildly successful like Leonardo da Vinci or Elon Musk or someone popular that you know who can do straddle multiple things, but you still could have multiple different interests and be successful in most of them in your own ways. And you gather the feedback and figure out if you're not successful, but you still have an interest and you build on it, or you give up and you do something else. I mean,
Yeah. Well, and Anupam, I'm not sure if you're the same way as me or not, but I love progression. I'm just obsessed with it and I want to make sure
yeah,
I keep progressing farther and farther. But I know other people aren't as much. They're usually, they want to, if they're curious, they want to, but a lot of people don't necessarily want to get to the top of the level. They want to get most of the way to it, and that's totally fine. And so when people listen to that multidisciplinary spectrum, it goes into being polymathy, or I even say true polymath, like Da Vinci kind of thing, where he's
yeah,
just at a whole nother level, so to speak. And it's like a lot of people don't want to get to that point. They want to be a specialist with a wide bunch of trades, or they want to be a generalist with a whole bunch of trades,
yeah.
multiple select types. But I think a lot of people just need to accept the fact that if they want to be that way, that's fine. Just be happy with that, so to speak.
Yeah, I mean, if someone is content with it, that's their play. If someone wants to be known as something, that's their play. I mean, for example, Da Vinci was known as
Painter
like an
mainly.
artist,
Yeah.
uh,
Artist.
but he's much more than that. I mean, when I grew up, I don't know whether you may not know, there is this Indian film director. His name is Satyajit Ray, and he directed a host of movies which won a whole host of awards. And when he died, he was given like the lifetime Oscar award on his deathbed. Like he was given the Oscar, I think within 1 week he passed away, something like that. But this guy, he directed, he gave music, he wrote books, he wrote children books.
Oh man, I want to interview this guy. Dang it.
Right? And so if you think of it, and he excelled in all of them.
Yeah.
He did photography. I mean, it's just like some people just get it and they do it well. Why not?
Well, and that's the thing. If you have the power or capacity to do it, then you might as well. And I think that too, one of my early guests left something with me that still always kind of bugs me, but it's a very wise statement, is that as someone who's polymathic or multipotentialite, you have to be able to accept the fact that history might only remember you for doing one thing. Like most people only remember Da Vinci as being a painter or an artist, despite the fact, like you said, he created war machines, he created a submarine suit, he created the first parachute. Like he did so much.
I think he's a physics professor, but
yeah, exactly. And it's just one of those things where you have to be able to accept that you might only be remembered for one thing, but you'll be able to do a lot of things in your life.
Yeah.
So kind of a left field question, moving on here too. How can we use data to become better multipotentialites, do you think?
How can you create data? How can you use data to become better multipotentialite? So I think there are 2 or 3 things you can definitely think of, right? Like, as I said, like someone who is a multipotentialite is going to frame problems very differently, right? Like you don't buy, okay, so like how do you frame, so let's say if they are going to frame problems differently, they need the data, right? They need the data to understand the problem, like what are you solving for? They need the data when they run experiments, so that they can iterate rapidly on what they're trying to hypothesize, right? And so data is something very important in a multipotentialite journey of moving quickly and making decisions, right? In telling a lot of yes, or in telling a lot of like, okay, this is going to work, this is not going to work, and this is my interest, this is not my interest, this is I'm going to be successful, this I'm not going to be. To have that, you need data. And I think this data could be anecdotal data, qualitative understanding of the ecosystem, right? Or it could be just pure numbers, like how many people read your writing, how many people watch your show. Is this something that I want to do? For example, when I started writing on Medium, I realized that nobody was coming to read my stuff on my own thing. Then I started writing a little bit towards data science and some other publications, and I'm like, yeah, okay, I'm getting hits. Like 5,000 people are reading my stuff, right? So it's not that I'm not writing. I'm writing crap. It's that it's the discovery process is weird, right? Like, and so you have to think of like, okay, then I have to figure out what's the discovery process. And so the data will help you in figuring out
What
what's the
marketing
discovery
kind of
process,
thing.
what market you fit in. And if you don't have the data, you'll think that you're not good at it. I think that's another important thing, that is some of those data could be used for at workplaces to kind of make yourself stand out. How do you define those data? How do you define progress? How do you measure your progress in different things? Is it just one axis? Like, for example, if you are running a business, is it just the amount of revenue that you made, or is it also the kind of people you work with, or the kind of companies you work with, or the kind of revenue it is? Is it like all the revenue that is coming in now? Is it the revenue that's gonna have an impact later on? Is it like, not all dollars are the same, like in business, at least not all dollars are the same. They don't look like money, but not all dollars are the same. So are you building a new talent pool because of that? Right. So when you start thinking of these different things in a systematic manner, you need to validate each of those items, and to validate that, you need the data.
It is interesting, because I'm not always, I'm a systematic thinker, but I'm not always good at data. And so it is interesting how it hit a little close to home for me there. No, but it's interesting too, because, for example, I teach personal training, and a lot of the times when someone does something new, when they're trying to exercise, do something really challenging, doing it once is not good enough. You have to have at least 3 times to see a data pattern of some sort. Like, how well did you do with it? What were you struggling with? You need a few times to get us started with it. And then I exponentially grow it to where if you can do 3, well, then you can do 10. Well, if you can do 10, let's skip 10, challenge yourself, do 20. And that's where I usually keep it, is at 20. And then it goes to 50 and 100. And that's how I do a lot of the exercises for a lot of my clients and myself, because then you can get much more data from that and much more practice over and over again with those reps and get better at it. And I think that same analogy can be applied towards these skills or whatever kind of.
I think data is hugely important in understanding how I'm doing as a multipotentialite.
Yeah.
Right. Like, it's kind of a self-assessment of like, am I doing it well? Am I screwing it up? And the more you do it, the better it is, right? For example, together with a couple of other people, we are trying to put together a web show for something that I wrote 5 years back, which has become now pretty popular. It was called basically organizational change, right? The unfinished business of organizational transformation. So I wrote something 5 years back, and during this COVID period, I made at least 10,000 people on LinkedIn who shared and liked this exact article. And right. And I'm like, okay, this has become really popular this year. And I'm like, okay, so now maybe we celebrate this, that it has become popular. And I've never done a video format, much like you said. Like, I've been more into writing. It's easier for me to write. And we're trying a new thing, and we're like, okay, how do you measure ourselves? That we're trying to create a new format of, I don't know, smart entertainment, right? How do you measure smart entertainment? Is it share? Is it guest?
Activity.
Is it topic? Like, and I think we're not yet there, but I think that's the kind of thing that we need to figure out, is that how do you use the data to understand your interests, your validation that you actually are interested in this, and you're not just doing it because it's something that you saw someone else do it and you felt like, oh, I can also do it too, but you may not be interested in it.
Well, and it's interesting too, because I was looking into interactive video for a lot of my content as well, try to get that way I can get more data from what people are interested in. Like, if someone's looking at this scene a little bit more, or if they're sticking around to this kind of question, like, then I can work off of that. And so let me know if anything comes from your research and your new show. I'll definitely check that out.
We're trying to find out.
Yeah, and I think I read that article too when I was doing my research for you. So I think that's something that you might want to dig more into too. I agree. So between CalculAI and realvalue.ai, you have some interesting endeavors when it comes to data and the business, analytics, and strategy. What are some of the things that those two businesses do for people who might not know?
Okay, so CalculAI is a pure consulting services play, right? So one of the interesting things that we did with CalculAI, I think perhaps one of the, I'd say it's a pretty interesting thing. A lot of companies get investments for doing things. And the VC firms would invest into these companies a chunk load of money. So we did due diligence for a couple of VC firms when they invest in different companies, right? So they said like, okay, these are AI companies. They are, at least on PowerPoint or slides, they are AI companies. Can you look under the hood and actually see what they're doing in the name of AI? Like, do they have data? Do they have processes? Do they have team structure? Do they have expertise? Do they have the culture and the values to kind of sustain this kind of AI initiatives? Like, so we created like a holistic report around multiple access and talked with those guys. And so we did that for a few different VCs and a few different startups, which I think is a very interesting work to do, because you get to look at different businesses and different aspects of businesses of other people in a very third-party objective way, but yet you become friends with them and try to. I think that's something that CalculAI does as a consulting service is very good. The other thing at Real Value is it's much more product focused. So while doing consulting, we have understood that there is a big space out there for computer vision to be used for understanding the physical space. And so we use cameras and we take the video streams and we analyze what humans are doing in that video streams. Which direction are they going? Are they going left or right? What are they wearing? What time are they coming in? What time are they going out? Things like that. Are they wearing a mask? Right? Are they socially distancing themselves?
Measuring from me to the back of the wall. Kind of thing.
Yeah. So we do all of that, and so it's a platform that we have. We call it a visual intelligence platform for operations and marketing team. And we provide analytics and insights for them. Things. So we do like 3 different areas. One we call trust and safety, is this kind of more around COVID things, right? COVID compliance things. And then the other is like flow and experience. Like if you are in a store, do I know your path in a store? Right? Like let's say you change the price of an item. Do people stop there to actually look at it because you changed the price of the item? Right? Like, oh, it suddenly become cheaper, suddenly become more expensive. Or last 5 items left, would you actually stop there? Because like you can have this A/B testing in a physical environment. A/B testing is usually considered to be like an online thing. So you can do these things like very rapidly and get feedback.
That's cool. Like, I wonder if like an application could be like a superstore, like a grocery store with cameras, and the AI could check if someone actually bought an item off that shelf or something like that. You might need multiple cameras, but yeah.
Usually they know because the product is gone. They will buy that, right? But what could be interesting is like, did they touch something and bought something else? That is more interesting than actually what you buy. Why didn't you buy this?
Well, and I remember watching this video literally this past week where a lot of the name brand and off-brand are just the same product with different packaging. Yes. And so people often go with one or the other just because of price or brand name, that kind of thing.
Price, brand name, appeal. At that moment in time, they may have remembered an advertisement that they saw, or they just felt that maybe they heard this name of this company from someone else. Like I'm not going to name the brand of the coffee. I mean, my wife bought a new brand of coffee, and I know her father buys the same brand of coffee, which I don't usually used to buy, but she bought it. So I'm like, okay, maybe she saw it and she made that connection, right? And so people have their nutty moments, I guess.
Opinions that my parents have given me that I still stuck around. Like, I don't like seafood, for example, because my mother just never liked seafood. And even though I have no reason not to like it, it's just landed on there. So I wonder if that has to do with the decision-making process as well. But that's just a tangent there. Yeah. But video analytics, I'm sure, is growing exponentially at this point, considering just how much more videos are coming online and all these new video creators like myself out there. There are even more data pools to pull from. What are some of the interesting trends your company has seen or come across then?
I think this is a very like, whatever I say right now would be wrong. So because it's a long trajectory, I think, of what computer vision could be in the future. For example, I'll just give you an example, right? 2 years back, there were no company in the horizon who was putting ads in video games. So now today, if you do a multiplayer role-playing game, you would actually see a Coca-Cola ad or a Pizza Hut ad inside the game. And it doesn't obstruct you, and they do that dynamically. So you can buy the ad inside the game space, right? Something like that is done through computer vision right now and AI. So what is happening today in the computer vision market or the vision AI market is drastically changing. Everything is going towards a camera. It's like the early days of internet, right? Somebody has discovered HTML, somebody has discovered TCP/IP, somebody has discovered browser, but Amazon is still to come. And once Amazon is there, everybody figures out what to do with internet. And I think computer vision is going through that early phases where you're just starting to kind of count, look at things, understand the behaviors, and the massive impact that it could have is still like a few years to go. I think like 5 years to go. There are research which says it's going to be a $24 billion industry by 2027. But I take those research with a grain of salt because they just
you just never know.
You don't know what they have looked at. I mean, they said internet would be X billion dollars of market, but the internet is a wall. Like they cannot value it like that, right?
Well,
like so.
And even like Zoom, for example, Zoom beat Skype despite the fact they've both been around for such a long time. And
Zoom is now a $20 billion company, like overnight.
Nowhere. We could not have known that last year that Zoom would be so big this year. And so there's like so many factors involved that could be.
And nobody predicted that this teleconferencing would be this big of an industry where you're going to have virtual conferences and people are going to raise money for creating virtual conference spaces. So I think those estimates are high level ballpark based on information that people know. And I mean, these are smart people, don't get me wrong, but they're still basing on what they know. They have not, they do not know what they do not know.
Right. And that's interesting too, because and moving on to the CalculAI, something on the website caught my eye actually. Understand, gather data, build, and evolve. And I think that this kind of goes off what we're saying there too. What can we do to evolve our next stages in life, that kind of thing? How does the company do that so well? And secondly, how can someone do that in their own life, do you think? Heavy question.
It's kind of basic nuances right now that you're telling me I definitely have to think about, but that's the process that we follow for a solution build out, right? So you have to first understand what you are solving for, right? And if you do not have a true purpose in life or a true goal, and that can change, right? Every 5 years you could have a different target in life. Like now that I have 2 kids, I have a completely different understanding of life that I had like 10 years back, right? And so you have to understand like where you are in the journey and what you're trying to solve for. And once you know that, then you have to figure out, okay, in order to do this, what kind of do this correctly, I need some evidence. I need to read. When we had our first child, we bought books of how to raise a child, with everyone giving you an advice on how to raise a child, and you're like, okay, and there are books for doing that. So you have to kind of learn that process, right? You have to understand and gather data points around that to kind of make sure that you're solving the right problem in the right way.
Yeah. And practicing those new skills.
Practicing those skills, and then you build a model and you make sure that, okay, the data is actually helping you have build the right model, you're finding the right results. You test it out, you validate it, you run a proof of concept to say like, okay, is this working? If this is working, then just put it on. Like learning how to put on diapers on kids, right?
It can be complicated at some point, especially the kids squirming. I had to change a lot of diapers growing up, so.
Right, and so you learn and you do it, and once evolution is one day your child will grow out of it. You don't need it anymore.
Yeah.
You will forget maybe even how we did it for the last 3 years. And so that's the evolution, and you move on. And the evolution in case of our modeling is today you may be modeling for something else based on the data that you have. We purposefully build systems that can collect some data. So as you collect new data, you may want to do it in a newer way. You may learn something that you have to change your models, right? So so if, as you are doing, and maybe you figure out that, hey, you're putting the diaper in the wrong way, and then this kid is peeing in the night and everything is getting wet, in spite of the diaper being there, probably you need to change your technique of how you put on the diaper.
Right. Well, and another good example, we were talking about, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt there, but we were talking about editing these videos before the call, and these videos get really long, and it takes me a hot minute to edit through them. And at the beginning, I would have the audio, the background, the Zoom call, the text, the logo, all on different tracks. And so anytime I wanted to cut something, I would cut each one of those lines and then do it again all the way down to cut all of that out. And I recently realized, wait, I could just combine them and then cut it once and call it a day. And that one little change gave me great change of speed when it came to editing. Yeah. And that's just one way to example of changing skills and using different data to pull from.
Yeah, and even I think you could possibly have other tool set that may help you with these things, right? That may suggest you that if you, I don't know whether there are tools like that, but that could be an interesting space to explore. If you give some keywords and some abstract that you want to get out of this, it may create a highlight for you automatically.
Yeah, I actually talked to someone about this on Fiverr the other day. I was seeing if someone could program this in Python or something, where an AI could check for any kind of ums or uhs or any extended long periods, and then automatically edit. Yeah, but
it can. It can, definitely it can.
Well, I need to find someone to do that then. Have it all automatic for me.
I think I have seen that recently. I've seen that recently. I've seen that very recently.
If you come across it, let me know, and then I can put it in the description too for people who are curious.
Yeah, I think I've seen that very, very recently. I've seen that where you can move your arms and ahs, and it would be magic. Mm-hmm. They're raising money. I think, yeah.
Well, I know there's one that's Descript, where they're doing things where they can, if you have a mess up on your speech, if we're talking right now and I say the, or I need to get something, I need to add something to it, I need to change a word, they can use an AI to give your voice new words. So you can literally, it's
say something else.
Say something else. Yeah, exactly.
A deepfake, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've been actually looking for, I forgot the name of the company. There's another company who is doing something which was really interesting for me. You can give them a bunch of text and they will read it for you with the emotion that you want, like professional or funny or whatever, right? And then they would actually have computer AI generated image, video image, sorry, not an image, a video of a person actually reading it. And so it will be like, if you want to do a press release, if you want to do something you don't need to be in person, you can just put someone there.
I saw something like that recently where it was an AI image and whatnot. There is one that I use a lot of, it's called speechkit.io, where it just basically takes my blog post and gives it a voice so people can listen to it. And that's something that's interesting as well.
What is it called? Speak to AI?
Speechkit.io.
Speechkit.io. That's something. That's pretty good.
Yeah. So from artificial intelligence and to writing and even thought leadership in this case too, how have you managed your multidisciplinary life?
It would be hard to say that I have managed it, but
I mean, you're here, so you managed somehow.
So, but I would say I let it kind of evolve, right? It's not directionless. Right now, when we are building a company ground up, building a product, a technology suite ground up, serving customers, I think all of those knowledge that has been gathered over the last 20, 30 years, I think comes into play right now, right? It's not so you have to think of that whatever you have learned doesn't go to waste. It doesn't go, you apply it in some way, even consciously or unconsciously you're applying it. I'm not thinking of managing it. I'm thinking of more looking out for things which are opportunistically interesting, right? In the sense it will make you money and you want to do it. And potentially it will help you learn and be a better person, right? If you find this kind of things, go do it.
Yeah.
Nobody should leave those opportunities unless they have other dire circumstances or they have too many of these opportunities. They have to probably choose which one.
Opportunity costs and whatnot. Well,
Yeah.
and a good example is you saying yes to this opportunity here to come out on the show. And it's interesting how, where you were talking about how you want to start doing videos or audio, it took me forever to get comfortable being on camera, or to know that I needed to look at the camera. And I've seen you look at the camera, or at the very least look at me, which means that's good enough. You have that presence on camera so that people actually can see you and actually have a good idea of who you are. And just understanding the fact that when you hear your own voice, it's going to sound lighter on the recording than it does in real life. So
also, I've still not figured out the lighting part. We moved to a new apartment, and the setup is not good.
It's not bad.
I think
it's better than mine. Look at this.
I mean, the setup is not good in the sense like you have the sound absorber there, right? I don't have it yet. And I think we have to set up an office space. We have not yet set up a dedicated office space. So that's something that we have to figure out. And I think you learn, you're going to live in this world and you have to figure out things. And if artificial intelligence of huge interest, because that is the future. That is the future of software. That is the future of work. That is the future of everything that we will end up doing. AI is going to be embedded in everything. There's nothing that you're going to do that AI doesn't touch.
Yeah.
So you have to know this, right? So multipotentiality or not, you better know some AI to figure out. For example, this video compression is done using AI. NVIDIA just came out, I think, a couple of days back with some technologies that compresses the video, changes face structure, and all of this in a very different way than it was done before, to stop using reduce bandwidth usage. Okay, fine. You may say that it doesn't matter to me. Now look, it matters to you because it actually saves you bandwidth.
Yeah. And also too, maybe it'll be a good way to upscale it down the line too. If I have a 10-year-old video, I can upscale it to 4K or something like that.
Yes, there we go.
So something I ask all my guests, because we talked about multipotentialites and just multidisciplinary people, but what is a polymath to you?
Tell me, what is a polymath to you? I want to listen through from you.
A polymath is someone with a deep level of knowledge in 3 or more areas that have pursued it over their lifetime. So I find that a lot of people who work at one job or one career over their life, you worked between different positions. You've moved around, for example, in those 8 years, but a lot of people move around to they entry level, middle level, they horizontally move, they go C executive, they move to a different company. Those are all different careers in their life. So most people are more polymathic than they might realize. So I think it's a more common occurrence. That's what I would say.
I think people don't know that they are polymaths. I think there are many people who would do many different things and they don't know that well. For example, I think it's also cultural a little bit, right? For example, if growing up, I saw that in my Indian community, a lot of people are very good with managing big events. And you never would have think that that's a quality, because you saw all the people, everyone was kind of knew how to do a big event, right? So if you have a marriage or a celebration or something, you'd have suddenly 500 people eating at your place.
Right.
500 people is a lot of people, right, in the Western context. And when I came over to US, and then you see wedding planners, or you see event planners, or you're like, okay, I see this, but now I'm putting back myself in the context of when I was there. I'm like, okay, people used to do this, and they never thought of it as a skill set,
right,
or as something to monetize on. But it's a deep skill.
Yeah.
It really needs collaboration. It needs thinking. It needs budgeting. It needs understanding, planning out the whole thing, right? The food, the catering, the decoration, all of this kind of planning out to the detail, right? And somebody would do that, and a lot of people would do that. And so I think people don't even realize that they have these skills because it's so much deeply ingrained in them. I think some of that appreciation people miss out because consciously they are not thinking of they being polymath or they being multipotentialite. I think a lot of people are. Most of us are.
Yeah. I think we're in agreement there, honestly, too, because there's a lot more common traits of a polymath than there are specialists. That would obviously say.
Yeah.
So that's interesting.
I mean, if you love cooking, right, and if you're into cooking and you're having and you do something well, let's say you cook Indian food well or you cook Mexican food well, that's a skill set.
Yeah. It's funny. It's so funny you say those two in particular, because that's the two nations that I've often based a lot of my cooking off of. I made eggs earlier with salsa, but also curry paste and having turmeric, and then having the jalapenos all mixed into one situation here with huevos. And so it's like, it's kind of funny how those are the three cooking things I like that.
Yeah. So let's say, I think people underestimate that how many areas that they could be good at. And I think we live in a world where we can choose now a lot than what we could before, and I think that's just an enormous opportunity for us to become multi-potentialite, to become much more than polymath, to become really cross-disciplinarian and work at the seams. I think working at the seams is very important. Than just, you need to be specialized, but you work at the seams always. Otherwise, it would be hard to succeed in the new future.
I think that's a great line to also wrap up the show on too, because I don't know if we can say anything better on that too. That's fantastic.
Thank you for having me.
So where can people find you online, by the way, so people can read those awesome articles?
So a good way is to do Anupam Kundu and Medium search, right? And you would land up on the articles. And if you know any specific topic, then you just put that topic and Anupam Kundu. I think you will find the article.
I'll make sure I'll have links too, just to make sure, but I just want to make sure people can hear it.
Yeah, on Medium, or I think I can send you the links. You can put up. But in fact, for myself, even when I want to go and look up any of my content, I go and Google search.
That's funny. And then what could be like a call to action for the audience to do today?
I actually thought about this, because I thought about that. What could be a call to action for a multi-potentialite, right? I think we're living in a world that is full of opportunities, full of abundance. And many people are going through this COVID crisis, losing jobs, losing family members, and losing loved ones. And I think I cannot go ahead and say that loss is not important. That loss is definitely important. It will shape you in who you are and your narrative in the future life. But your time is limited, and you have a lot of opportunities and abundance. Take that loss that is happening and use it as an inspiration and a foundation to do something better, right? Don't live someone's life. Don't get trapped into dogma. Don't let the noise of other people telling you what to do kind of trap you into this mindset of this is what I got to do. Because I think everyone is fundamentally poised for greatness, and they can do much more than what they're doing right now. You don't have to be Elon Musk, don't have to be Leonardo da Vinci, but you can, as an individual, can do much more than where you are. So follow your heart, follow your guts, intuition, and you will shine.
I love that. Thank you. And so once again, this is Dustin Miller, PolyInnovator, and Anupam Kundu on the Polymath PolyCast. Thank you for joining me.
Thank you for having me.